There's chaos in you. Embrace the chaos.
Welcome back, everybody, to Real Time for the Real Everyday Movie Fan. I am, of course, your host, Josh Williams.
I'm Ryan Murphy.
And I'm James Jordan.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, everybody, because we're here to give you our full-fledged spoiler review of Moon Knight Season 1 or Series 1. That's one of the big questions that's on everybody's mind, because right now there's no definitive plans for continuation of Moon Knight. But
even though it ends on a pretty definitive note,
right, exactly. That's one thing we should know, because they said there wasn't, and the reason people are speculating there's not going to be another season is because it's campaigning for best miniseries at the Emmys. So that's, you kind of have to have certain parameters. You can't have another season if you're going to go for that. But we'll get on to that here in a bit, as there's something very interesting of note. Ryan, before we move forward, who was the showrunner for this one, and who was all in this one?
Moon Knight was created by Jeremy Slater. The directors were certain episodes were Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, and the other ones were by Mohammed Diab. And the show, of course, mainly stars. The show, of course, mainly stars Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, and May Calamawy, and or Calamawy, and of course also F. Murray Abraham, the great Oscar winner F. Murray Abraham, as the voice of Khonshu. So
he did so good as Khonshu. Great, perfect voice for that character. And so before we move forward here, if you like our content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you receive all of our great content we have coming for you down the pipe. I know Ryan's trying to get some more interviews going. I'm excited to hear what he has coming up next. Mm-hmm. So, but other than that, let's get into Moon Knight. Now, for me, I'll just go right off the top. For me, this is probably easily my second favorite of all the Disney Plus shows. I still think WandaVision's my absolute favorite overall. But this one for me, I thoroughly enjoyed. This such a great dive into a character piece, for probably the best character piece aside of Wanda that we had as far as these Netflix shows go. And other than that, the Oscar Isaacs is just Oscar Isaac, not Isaacs. He's phenomenal. He is always a great actor in anything he ever does. I think we can all agree with that. Anything he's ever in, maybe with the exception of Apocalypse. That was more on the director than anything. I think this is the perfect role for him, especially how he was able to switch from being Steven to being the main character of himself. So who is it? I'm sorry.
Mark Spector.
Mark Spector. Jesus Christ, yeah.
Just how he's able to he was not in this.
But how he was able to switch back and forth while his face is on screen is pretty miraculous. It's always amazing when someone can do that. Like James McAvoy did that in Split, and it's just right there along with that performance.
Reminds me of what's her name? And Maslany Tatiana or something like that.
Tatiana Maslany.
Yeah, sorry. Who did that, the Orphan Black series, and just like that one, he is so good at being so distinct to both of these characters. I forget it's the same person.
Yeah,
so
I
know
agree.
It's
the
same face, but it's almost like it's just like two completely different people, which you'd kind of expect for that kind of performance and role. But it's like, do you know how often people don't do well at that?
Right.
So like this just to me stood out as such an exception that high praise for.
Oh yeah. Especially the slipping between the dialogue, like his British accent to his American accent, kind of just seamlessly going back and forth. And that was, to me, I can't praise it enough. I'm going to give this show, I'm probably going to give it, I'm stuck between an 8.5 and a 9. There were a couple episodes where I felt a little bit of a lull, but other than that, the show overall is an amazing character piece. It's a great introduction to Moon Knight.
Gotta give it a score, man. Gotta make a
Huh?
decision.
I gotta make a decision. I'm just gonna go 9, then 9 out of 10. There was one big complaint I had, but maybe it's all revolving around budget. I'll get into that later. But James, why don't you go next? What did you think of the show?
I'll start by saying that I'm not the biggest Moon Knight fan. In fact, like the only time I've actually, because I've spent several decades reading comics and whatnot, and he wasn't one that I collected, but he would occasionally pop into other books that I was reading, as happens in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
So going into this, I wasn't huge in my knowledge of this character or his struggle. I did some research beforehand, and from what I can tell, while they took some liberties and changed some things around, for the most part, they're fairly faithful to at least the spirit of the source material. But one of the things going to this that I was really excited about was the fact that he is known for this split personality situation. And what excited me was seeing a depiction of a character who is not mentally healthy, and seeing not just the creative aspect of that, because they did a really good job of the creative sort of depiction of like switching between them, and like the entire first episode you're blacking out constantly, and
I love that so much.
Like losing entire time, which from the perspective of Steven, who we're introduced to as sort of the main character, spoilers, but later it's revealed he is the second personality, Mark is the main personality, but like the entire experience is very good at, first of all, pulling me into the series in a big way, but also like making Mark a much more sympathetic character, in that he, like I'm experiencing what he's experiencing. I'm experiencing those blackout moments, and really it isn't until like the final minutes of the episode that that's put into actual context, which was outstanding. Again, I can't praise his performance enough. I'm going to give the series. I'm also waffling between a 7.5 and an 8. I'm going to lean towards an 8 simply because there's so much about it I love. I really feel let down by the villain story. I really don't give a shit about Arthur Harrow or anything he's doing. I don't find him to be an interesting character. Like the only thing interesting about him is in the first few minutes of the opening episode when he's putting glass in his shoe, and it's like, okay, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a very strange, masochistic sort of character, who for some reason is punishing himself, and like I get some context for that, but like I don't care about it, like what he's trying to do. At no point am I sympathetic towards what he's trying to do. I'm not sympathetic towards the idea that he used to be the avatar for Khonshu, and it's like sort of vengeful about what's going on. None of that really resonates with me, and like the middle two episodes, like the first two episodes were great, especially the first episode, fantastic episode. Middle two episodes to me were really fucking boring, and then the last two episodes just ramped up and gave us like not just incredible backstory, incredible insight into the psyche of Mark Spector, but like visually and storytelling wise and everything. To me it was so impactful and so fascinating and so fun to kind of explore. Like I saved the last 3 episodes until the last week because I was kind of bored by the third episode. But damn, once they go into that asylum and everything kind of flips, and then like they're in like the realm of the dead and all that, and like all of that stuff just ramped up to me.
That was so awesome.
I can't praise enough how much I enjoyed that stuff. I do want to say that one of the negatives, as much as I enjoyed the fact that they are exploring dissociative identity disorder, which is not multiple personality disorder. It's no longer referred to that, and it's not schizophrenia. I know the comics originally called it schizophrenia, but the DSM-5 officially diagnoses it as dissociative identity disorder, even though I don't think they even call it that in the show.
I think they did once.
Did they? Okay.
When he was in that asylum,
yeah, okay,
which was really his mind.
Yeah.
But
it's clearly that's the sort of symptoms that they're going with, and they do unfortunately take some liberties with the depiction. Like there's some things that get accurate, like it's very much a childhood trauma response or a war trauma response, which of course Mark is suffering from both for obvious reasons.
Right.
and like I love that aspect of it, but there is an unfortunate thing in Hollywood where, especially with the mentally ill, they tend to treat them as sort of perpetrators of violence and very violent characters, especially when it comes to multiple personality disorder. Like you said, Split is very much that, where several of the personalities were, you know, very villainous, and at least one is like ultra violent kind of thing. And it's like,
Yep.
Most mentally ill people are actually tend to be victims of violence rather than the perpetrators of violence, and abuse and all that stuff. So like I would really have loved if they kind of stepped away from that, but at the same time, how do you do a character who is a mercenary, and as we saw at the end, the third personality, which they are associated, they seem to be implying has some sort of like berserker mode kind of like assassination ability that even Mark wasn't prepared for. I don't know how you do that without delving into the violence, but like I would still like to see more depictions of these kinds of mental illnesses that are honest and frank without falling into the stereotype of the violence. So to me, that's where it loses a few points. And like I said, I don't really give a shit about Harrow's journey, so that one kind of sinks my score a little bit. The middle couple episodes kind of sink it for me. And as much as like it was kind of fun to see some of the gods, the giant like kaiju fight in the background, to me felt like a giant distraction as we were like trying to deal with actual consequences. So I don't know. To me, it just, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's understandable. It's understandable. I liked that aspect. I found it very interesting take on how to handle the gods, like how they would fight, not just relying on their avatars, because people kind of want to see that, especially like since we're seeing Khonshu so often. I liked Harrow's journey. I liked how the Ethan Hawke's portrayal. I got a very David Koresh feel from him, which I found very riveting in a way. So like that, it kind of just very interesting choice of how to handle this character. And even in the end, I was worried. The one thing I was worried about is when they do the final battle scene, because it always happens in any show. You expect you to see the antagonist and protagonist fight. I was afraid that after, you know, when the final episode came down, I was like, oh God, they're going to put Ethan Hawke in some ridiculous costume or something. No, he just stuck with his clothes. And it was a refreshing take on an antagonist not having to dress up like a supervillain. You know what I mean?
But even beyond that, they even skip part of the battle, the final fight between them, and just cut to Mark holding him.
I liked that. Like even in the first episode they did that. I loved that because it lets your imagination went wild of what the hell did he do?
Yeah. Why don't we just skip the whole series? Let's just go from episode 1 to episode 6, and we'll just skip the whole series. Well, Matt, my imagination is going crazy now.
It's a good. What happened? It's a different artistic choice that I felt refreshing almost. But Ryan, what about you? I can tell you didn't quite like that aspect of the show, but what about you? What did you think?
I'm waffling between, I too am waffling. It seems to be the episode of waffling between a 6.5 and a 7. Mm-hmm. I would say probably a 6.5. I just didn't get a whole lot out of this. I can't really point out like any super specific flaws. I get that people really like the dissociative identity disorder aspect of it. I really enjoyed that. If you're going to do it, why don't you start with the personality that's kind of a fake life? You know, we're introduced to Stephen Grant as if he's the real deal. Mm-hmm. And of course, he is something that Mark Spector made up. And this is a life that is not actually, you know, has not been lived. It's a fake name. It's, you know, all that. It's not his real accent. It's an accent he, you know, made himself speak in. And I enjoyed the fact that we go from that to actually meeting Mark Spector down the line. And I thought that was interesting storytelling. I thought it was interesting storytelling when they're in the asylum and we get to see his life story. And that's how we finally you know, get introduced to his whole backstory in his life. I thought, that was all interesting. I too was kind of bored in the middle episodes. In fact, I didn't like James. I put off watching this for a while. Like I just stopped for a while and then I got caught up, you know, mainly because I was hyped for Doctor Strange and I just have to do everything in order. So I was like, oh man, if I'm going to go see Doctor Strange on Thursday, I got to finish watching Moon Knight first. So there was that aspect, but also the final episode was a big disappointment for me for multiple reasons. Excuse me. Okay. False alarm. The final episode was a big disappointment for me because it just kind of devolved into a very generic sort of like, you know, let's fight. And it's not like the villain and the hero shouldn't fight. So I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to put my finger on what was bugging me. It just felt kind of empty a little bit. It just sort of was like, oh well, now we're, I don't know, fuck it. Now let's fight. It just like, I felt like there should be something more there at the end. It doesn't help that there's parts of this that I didn't understand and still don't understand. And I'll watch it again. I'll probably watch it when I'm down in Missouri next time with Josh. We'll just put on Womb Night. They say Womb Night. No, that's a
Womb Knight's a different character.
Josh, you there, bud?
Yeah, I'm here. No, we're good. My cord got, loose a little bit there, but I'm here. I was here. I heard everything.
So yeah, like that's just kind of how I felt about the series, but it'd be interesting to see moving forward what happens with it. So
see, that's where I kind of I liked the ending because it's the MCU formula, but you still get to see Moon Knight fight. The one part where I felt the emptiness or the lack of, like, I felt deflated almost, because like when what's the god that Harrow releases? Amet. Like when Amet gets put into Harrow and he gets put in that gets put in an asylum, I was like, okay, cool. So we're gonna get more of him in the future. And then the mid-credit scene happens and he just, Jake Lockley kills him. I'm like, oh well, okay.
No, that was in the real world, right? That was not like
that was in the real world. Yeah.
And that was like he actually got murked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. So that's why I was kind of like, oh, well, okay. I mean, it's kind of interesting seeing Khonshu take on Mr. Moon Knight, the suit aspect, like, because he's wearing the suit that Steven's avatar character Moon Knight would wear. That was very interesting. But I just felt kind of deflated by that. And I was just like, oh, well, shit. Because I was looking forward to seeing Ethan Hawke in it more. One of the other things I didn't like. Sorry, do you have something to add to that one, James?
Well, just I loved what they did with Mr. Knight as a character, because
Mr. Knight, yeah,
Mr. Knight is sort of a distinct interpretation of Moon Knight, where because part of the backstory of Mark Spector is that he's a former mercenary and he creates these identities of Stephen and Jake Lockley for the purpose of trying to get into different parts of society. So Mark is a former government agent, former mercenary. He creates the Stephen identity to get into higher society by making a rich man kind of identity. While Jake Lockley is a taxi driver on the street, kind of dealing with, the everyday street level kind of people.
Yeah.
Both of them are gaining information, and somewhere down the line, he actually developed split personalities of these identities, whereas originally they were just sort of like other sort of roles he plays, like intentionally other roles. And Mr. Knight is sort of an extension of that high society kind of role when he's sort of pushing himself further into that. So I like that they gave Steven that identity as his interpretation of what Moon Knight is, where he's sort of like prim and proper, but still kind of a little bit disheveled and a little bit sort of ornate. Like it's not just a regular white suit. It's got like a little bit of like Egyptian sort of like feathery kind of design to it. So I really love that separation of the interpretation. And that's what I'm talking about, where it's not entirely accurate to the comics, but it's accurate in spirit.
Yeah.
It makes sense for the story. And that's the kind of stuff that I get jazzed about watching these shows, is seeing how they pull these things from the comics and make them real. On the topic of outfits, when Layla gets her outfit,
that's a great outfit.
I lost my fucking mind, because I'm like,
she's supposed to be there's a specific superhero she's taking inspiration from.
Yeah, it's like really obscure. They pulled it out of nowhere, but
I can't remember the name. Go ahead, James. I'll find it.
I just love that sort of reveal. Tarad as a character, I thought was a great sort of side thing that was going on. So when she made Layla her avatar for a bit, and she got like a full sort of like warrior Wonder Woman type outfit, I was like, oh, this is so badass.
And how she used her wings like to block things, it was pretty sweet. Scarlet Scarab is the obscure superhero that's from the Moon Knight area.
That's fascinating, because she had a lot more of the connection to the Scarab than anyone else, I think.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I didn't pick up on that when they that's interesting.
But that was one of my other negative, like the suit's awesome. Loved Moon Knight suit. But that's where my negative goes, is because I didn't see enough of it. Now I can understand if they have a budgetary reason for it. That's understandable. But these shows get a lot of money put into them, and not seeing. And now I don't. It's kind of a catch-22, because if you hadn't put on the suit, that means you're taking away from the character dive that you're going deep into with this character, with Oscar Isaac's characters.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of like, because I loved every minute of that, but at the same time I was like, I wanted a little more of a balance of seeing Moon Knight kick some ass. You know what I mean?
That was sort of my thing, was like they keep cutting back to, they keep having him change back into Mr. Knight, and it's like, this show is called Moonlight. Let's just watch Moon Knight kick ass. Like I kind of don't. That's the thing, is like, as much as I kind of enjoyed the sort of storytelling aspect of starting from Steven's perspective and kind of realizing that he's actually Mark, like that, once it gets there, I kind of don't give a shit about Steven. Like it's just sort of like, he's just another personality. Like Mark is the actual guy, and Mark is Moon Knight, and the show is called Moon Knight, so let's watch Mark kick some ass. And the whole dissociative identity.
Had a lot more of the character development.
Yeah, he did.
Watching him grow was more interesting than watching Mark kind of.
Well, I loved at the end where when they were exploring his life, he gets that realization that, well, even as us as the audience, at least how I interpret it was, is that Steven's actually the strongest one. Like, may not be physically, but he created Steven so he can protect himself from all the evilness that was happening in his life. So in reality, he created Steven to help him. Like, Steven's the stronger element of him, if that makes sense.
Which I
the brains, exactly. Yeah.
Where like they need an Egyptologist, which he's not really. He just works at a museum, but like through osmosis, he's kind of learned all of this stuff, and through enthusiasm, he's kind of learned all this stuff. And I like that they kept having to force him to do things, because they need someone to interpret this stuff, whereas Mark's just a goon with a gun kind of thing most of the time. Mm-hmm. He's not, but I mean, if we're boiling them down to their essence, then Steven's the brains.
He's the brawn.
Mark is the fist, and Jake is, I don't know,
the bazooka. I don't know. Yeah. and I knew they were hinting at something, a third personality, when like that first scene, they're like, "Did you do that, Steven? No, did you?" And I'm like, "No." And
well, it was when he came back after beating up the thugs, and they're like, "Oh, now you're speaking Egyptian."
Yeah.
You think that he's supposed to be speaking English, but it's like neither of them are kind of like clued into what's going on. And
yep.
You get that, like when they finally do reveal it's Jake Lockley and he's speaking Spanish, they're like, "Oh snap, that's what that was."
And I almost feel like Jake Lockley comes out like when his life is at serious risk.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like both those times when his life was at serious risk of being killed or injured in a way, that's when he comes out. Now that hopefully we'll explore more of why he's now coming out more. Maybe it's because Khonshu has chosen him over everybody else.
I like the fact that Khonshu knew about him, whereas Steven and Mark.
I love Khonshu, but Khonshu's an asshole.
Oh yeah,
he is a manipulative. Damn, he is a manipulative asshole. But I love the character at the same time. It's crazy. So
branching off of your point about the whole suit thing and the lack of suit, I was a little disappointed by him not becoming Moon Knight very often. I do understand why they're doing it, because it's a very human story, and much like the whole Spider-Man thing where they keep taking off his fucking mask, they want these characters to be human and be present in human, whereas when he's in the Moon Knight outfit, he's just dressed head to toe, and it's like producers for some reason seem to think that we can't relate to those characters. So I get what they're going with there. I'm disappointed there wasn't more sort of like street level kind of action, because Moon Knight is very much in that sort of Daredevil, heroes for hire kind of realm, but also has his foot like sort of firmly planted in the horror genre, which is something that I was really hoping that this series would get into, because with the exception of Multiverse of Madness, like we're very clearly moving into horror aspects of the story. We've already
Midnight Suns kind of thing. Yeah.
Whether they're doing Midnight Suns or not, I don't know, but they've clearly established Blade and a connection to Black Knight, both of whom who have very deep horror roots. Moon Knight was introduced in Werewolf by Night, and I think it was like 1975 or something. And like he's very steeped in those horror roots. So like I was fully expecting Blade and Black Knight to show up at the end to kind of recruit him too. And like there's all kinds of rumors circulating about, are we going to get Ghost Rider again? Because they haven't been utilizing this character, even though he popped up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So like I want to see where they're going with this horror aspect, and I was really hoping that this series would be the bridge, but like minus like a couple monsters he fights and a little bit of gore, it wasn't very horror centric. It was very much more gods centric, which I understand because you're dealing with Khonshu and Ahmet and
and it really delved deep into the culture of Egypt, and I liked that quite a bit. And going back to your original point, James, I do find it funny though that producers and stuff, they feel like they need to show the actors or actress's face in order for us to feel connected with the character. But if Mandalorian proves anything, I mean, I'm very connected to Din, and he always has his helmet on. You know what I mean? Like, there's not one. I lost focus. There's not one. There's like maybe there's one episode where he had 2 episodes where he had his helmet off, but ever than this since then, he's had his helmet on. But I think he's probably one of the most relatable characters in Disney Plus right now. Period.
But on that point, those moments where he takes off the mask are such big moments because he doesn't take off the mask. That seeing his face is such a shocking thing. I mean, not shocking because, like,
yeah, I know what you mean, though.
Human being. It's not like, there's a monster underneath there. It's just that, like, these are moments that are hugely impactful because he doesn't take off the mask. But we still spend 2.2 seasons loving this character and watching him through his journey. Now, of course, I think some of the humanization with that comes from his bond with Grogu.
Yeah.
So that becomes a little there is a connection there, but yeah, I've always found it weird that they insist on taking off superheroes' masks when Deadpool spends the majority of his films,
mask. I mean,
obviously, like they're able to make him emote, so it's a little bit different, but it's still like
right.
I would like to see these characters in their outfits a little bit more, especially when you've gone to all of this length to make such an outstanding Moon Knight
costume design. Yeah, that design is so sick.
And like, because it's got that sort of like mummy wrapped.
Yeah.
Thing, and it's like it's still very much the like white Batman with a like hood kind of look. And
so cool. Loved it.
Every moment where he's jumping up and his cape becomes the crescent moon. It's like these are the great moments, but it's like there's not enough of them. So yeah, I was hoping that there'd be more of that. I was hoping he'd fight more thugs kind of thing, especially if, like, as you said, Harrow is supposed to be a David Koresh type, like where he's leading this cult. Why is he not fighting more cult members kind of thing? It's like you've got goons, you've got all kinds of goons following the villain. Why is Moon Knight not beating up the goons? So I'm not gonna knock the series because the rest of it was so good, and I enjoyed those moments so much as they were. I even enjoyed the Mr. Knight and switching back and forth because I like the dichotomy between the 2 characters and the battle between them. So I'm not going to knock it for not showing the suit enough, but yeah, I'd like to see the suit more. Yeah.
So let's kind of, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to add, we can kind of get into our final thoughts here. James, did you?
I mean, I could go on about this show for hours.
We
don't have the time for that.
That's okay. Let's kind of wrap up our thoughts. What's that?
That's kind of the thing we have, is where Josh says, does anyone have any final thoughts, James? And James goes, I could go on for hours, but
true.
We've settled into a formula.
For me, I really enjoyed the show a lot. I love the show. My score may change up. I still stand by. I think this is my second favorite of the whole Disney Plus shows that we're getting from Marvel. Just based on the character dive alone and Oscar Isaac's performance. That's the best part of this whole thing. It's right up there with Wanda's and Elizabeth Olsen's performance. Now, and wrapping in with my final thoughts, I don't think they're going to do a season 2. I think they're going to go the Falcon and Winter Soldier route, where they're going to make a movie, because Anthony Mackie is getting his own Captain America movie. And I think the next logical step for me in this is to introduce him in Disney Plus like they have been, and then give him his own movie. I think that's the route that's going to happen. We're probably going to get an announcement at some point from Kevin Feige. I have full confidence in, and it's deserving. Oscar, I see. I keep putting the S at the end. He owns this role. He just done such a good job. He did his own stunts. He did a lot of preparing for this character and for this role and for this whole show. I really would just love to see a movie for him, or at least have him also introduced in other films as well. But what about you, Ryan? Your final thoughts, wrapping this up as far as the future for it and everything else?
Yeah, I
Poor sick Ryan.
I like I said, I can see why some people really like this. It just that wasn't necessarily for me. Once we kind of got introduced to Mark, I kind of stopped giving a crap about the dissociative identity disorder. I just kind of wanted to see Mark Spector because that was the central character. That's who Moon Knight is, and I wanted to see him as Moon Knight kicking ass. And then I also got kind of, I have some mixed feelings because then at the end, when it just kind of devolves into him fighting Arthur Harrow, I wasn't really expecting that. I was maybe expecting him to fight Ahmet and not Ahmet fighting Khonshu. Maybe that was it. Like when he's just fighting Ethan Hawke and Ethan Hawke turns into an action figure. Maybe that seemed silly to me. I don't know. But there's a lot I didn't quite get or understand. I'll watch it again. I'm open to watching it again. So it's like I said, it's a 6.5, maybe a 7. But yeah, it's recommendable. It's a nice little character piece. So.
By you, James, to finish
I really
off.
hope this isn't the only season, because I think this is a character that's worth exploring in sort of a longer format. Like as much as I enjoy the movies unfortunately don't get to spend as much time exploring character, and that's why I think WandaVision and this were really strong contenders for the stories they were telling. Because if you told WandaVision in a film, you wouldn't have the 6-hour format to tell as much story. Sometimes that's to the benefit of the show where some of these could lose a bit of time. Like we said, some of the middle stuff in this wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
But I think the character exploration needed more than a 2 to 3 hour format kind of thing. And some of these films like Multiverse of Madness are a little bloated in my opinion, where there's a lot going on, but it doesn't feel like there's as much sort of focus and deep dive into a lot of the stuff that's going on as much as I would like. Not everything, but I do think that these offer the opportunity to go deeper on that stuff, and that's why I really would like to see another season as opposed to a movie. Where I would like to see it go in terms of movie is a Midnight Suns kind of thing.
Right.
I know that Blade is coming as a movie. They've already announced it. I don't know the release date of that one, but I have a feeling that
they haven't announced me yet.
They're really going to push further into that horror realm. We already know that again, Dane Whitman is, going to be an integral role in this sort of thing, played by Kit Harington, and they're already establishing those things. I'd hoped that this was going to fit into that. It hasn't yet, so I'm hoping that the next stages of this character, wherever they take him, will be included in that, because he has a deep history in the horror genre, and I think that that's some of the most interesting storytelling aspects of the character. And again, I'm always happy to see earnest or creative ways of sort of exploring mental illness, because it's such sort of an ostracized and stigmatized condition that a lot more people than people realize suffer from, not necessarily dissociative identity disorder itself, but people can relate to this stuff who've had other mental illnesses and whatnot, and the sort of outcast feeling, and especially people who've dealt with PTSD and trauma response, and there's a lot to kind of unpack and relate to here. I think they did a beautiful job of all of that, and I would like to see more of that, not just in superhero stuff, but in media in general. So
yeah,
I'm really happy with a lot of this. Again, the middle, not great, but it is what it is. You need to tell some story to get from point A to point B. I just wish they made it a little more interesting. Harrow, I don't think was that interesting of a character. You've turned me around a little bit on the David Koresh aspect. I'm kind of seeing where you're going with that, but I don't think it was as effective as I would have liked it to have been.
Yeah, that's understandable.
The way Riddler in the Batman was very much, a mix of Zodiac and Jigsaw kind of thing. I would have liked to see this push further into the David Koresh kind of thing, where they are stockpiling guns and the government's after them, or something to that effect. But that's not the story they were telling, and I'm not as engaged by the story they were telling. So to me, that's where it loses some stuff. But overall, just outstanding series. Very happy with it. Oscar Isaac deserves every goddamn award under the sun for this performance. Because he just did such a good job. I completely forgot that he was two different people, or that he's the same person playing two different characters. To me, he was just two distinct different characters, and then very briefly a third, but we didn't get much of Jake Lockley, so it's hard to judge that one. But just so much praise, so much love, just great job. Just bring me the horror, bring me the mutants.
Bring me
I
the
wanna see
Midnight
these
Suns.
stuff.
Bring me the
Bring me
mutants.
new stuff, Marvel. We've
right.
done the old Avengers stuff and superheroes and all that stuff. Let's move into other parts of your lore. We know it's coming. You're teasing it. Just
Yep.
give it to me. Stop
Yep.
slapping me in the face.
And James, to your question, they're projecting in November 2023 for Blade. So
Okay, cool.
all right, folks, that was for today. Thank you very much for watching. More importantly, what did you think of Moon Knight Season 1? Leave your comment section below. Let us know whether you liked it or not. Give us your score out of 10 and what you think the future will hold for Moon Knight. You think they're going to do another series, another season? That's kind of in question because there are rules when you try and push for a campaign for a show because they're doing limited release, a limited series for the Emmys. We'll see. I think it's going to be a movie, but let us know your thoughts. Also, if you like what you watched, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel to receive all of our various content in the future. That's all we have for today. Again, I'm Josh Williams.
I'm Ryan Murphy
I'm James Sheridan.
And thank you for keeping it real.
with ReelTime.
Good night.
Mutants.